Thank you guys all for being here. Did everybody get the little handout? This is going to be more interactive than I usually am. Sometimes I talk up here and I hear myself talk, but this time I really want to engage you guys. And so you have this worksheet to kind of keep notes. I may even ask people to share, so get ready. I may pick on you. But just be ready to engage, because I really want you guys to take a thoughtful approach to how does this impact you individually. And if you guys can't hear me in the back, I have been told that I'm a quiet talker, so just like wave your hands. But I'll try to project today. So today we're not talking, or we are sort of talking about performance, right? But we're not talking about it in the sense that we think of, right? We're not talking about hustling. We're not talking about pushing through. Has anybody ever had those times where you feel like there's this project coming and you're like forcing it through the door? Anybody?
Yes.
Yes. Transitioning from hospital medicine for me into starting my own business was a whole new ballgame with that, right? The first couple years, I felt like I was like forcing things. And I felt like I was like, all right, what do I do? What do I need to do now? And I was constantly doing stuff. But what I've learned over time is that when we can like relax on that and allow things to ease, and the things that come easier, those are the things that work. And I want to show you 3 ways today that I think that they work. So high performers, I don't think they push, but they find these 3 things in alignment. And the 3 things I want to talk about today are mindset, your brain wiring and how your brain is kind of functioning to make you feel safe, and then your biology. And I think all 3 of these things, when they're in alignment, things go so much easier. So he already told you about me. This is me. I always have a slide about me in my presentation in case somebody doesn't introduce me, but you guys already heard about me. But what I really, really like to do, he told you, I worked in the hospital for over 20 years. Well, almost 20 years. Mostly I was in the ICU, but my last year I was in the emergency room. And that's what kickstarted the reason why I jumped into what I'm doing now in coaching. Because I saw people come in and wait for 6 hours to be seen, and then about 4 more hours to get whatever their diagnosis was. And I'd say more often than not, we would hand them paperwork that said, everything's normal. But they didn't feel normal. You'll find later in this, I'm going to talk about what it means to be normal. And I don't want you guys to settle for normal, because what we call normal in society right now is not optimal. And so we're not high functioning if we accept normal as kind of our reality. But that's what kickstarted me into working as a coach and taking out of the hospital to everyday people, saying, you can feel better than this. Don't feel so crummy that you wait for 6 hours to be seen and somebody's like, oh, you're fine, go home. As if it's reassurance, because nothing changed. You still feel as bad as you did when you walked in the door. So I want us to start out, before we talk about goals, because this is sort of about goal setting, but yet a lot of you guys might have done the goal setting in December. I want to start by talking about your wins. And this is very important. So we're going to start here. So take about 30, 60 seconds. I want you to look back on 2025 and write down something you're proud of. What did you do well? It doesn't have to be big. It could be, hey, I hate calling people and making connections and marketing, but I did it. Whatever it is. I'm going to give you a second. And I want to say while you're doing this, don't minimize your wins. Oftentimes we say, oh, I did that, but, or it could have been better. Just accept your win for being a win. Oh, I'm up there, aren't I? Oh, over here. There we go. Now, as you're finishing up, I want to tell you a little bit about why this is important. Because we have to instill belief, right? When we start with our wins, it's not just forward looking at goals and what I want to accomplish. I'm going to tie this in a little bit later too, but when we start with wins, it allows us to believe what's possible. So we've got to start with our wins before we can set our goals. Because if we don't know what we can accomplish by reminding ourselves of what we have accomplished, it's harder to think about our goals. Or we can, I think, have more optimistic and bigger goals if we can look at our wins. So I want to tell you a story about Ellen. And of course, I apologize. A lot of my stories are very health related, and you might be looking at this, your goals or your wins may be related to your business, personal, professional, it doesn't matter, whatever it is. So mine are all health related because that's what I do, right? But Ellen came to me, she wanted to lose weight, she wanted to reverse her prediabetes, she also wanted to balance her mood, a lot of things. Anyways, one occasion, every week I talk to my clients about their wins. And if you guys are further away and you can't see this one, there is a screen over there, because it's kind of flat. So I said, what were your wins this week? And she had already had some great successes, but she had kind of a bad week. She had been sick. And some of you guys may have heard the story before because I use her story a lot. So during that week when she was sick, her husband had brought home donuts 5 days in a row. And so I said, well, because she hesitated to give me wins. She's like, well, I don't know. And I was like, well, what's going on? Tell me more. She's like, well, I had donuts this week. And I know I've been so successful. I've already lost some weight, but like I had donuts. And I'm like, well, tell me more. So she told me about how her husband brought home donuts for 5 days because they have a young daughter who's in elementary school. So he thought he was helping out to get her out the door. And she's like, he's killing me. Well, I said, well, tell me, how many donuts did you have? And she said, I had 2. And I said, well, he brought some home for 5 days, 6 months ago. How many donuts would you have had? And she's like, I would have had 10. And I said, now you're looking at the wrong thing then. You're looking at, and we're going to talk about the gap versus the gain here on the next slide. You're looking at the gap between where you are and where you want to be. You have this dream that like you'll never eat a donut again or whatever it is if you're trying to lose weight. But you're missing the fact that you didn't eat 8 donuts. So let's look at the gain that you made. And that was her win then for the week. And she was like, oh, because she started out our meeting and she was kind of like, I don't have anything. And by the end, she was like, oh, I feel so much better. I actually did do some good stuff this week. And when you instill that belief, then you believe things are possible. So this is her. And this is what I love about her story and what she posted on Instagram one day that I steal all the time. She says, I have never felt so good in my body, my mind, and my gratitude. My brain is truly rewiring. And so this is where I talk about the beginning of that rewiring of our brain, right? If we can focus on our wins, we begin to rewire our brain, because when our brain is only focused on what we're not doing well, which that's what this thing with the gap and the gain, I'll just show you this. If we only focus on that gap, if we only focus on the 2 donuts, our brain feels unsafe because it feels like it's doing nothing wrong, or nothing right. I said that wrong. It feels like it's not doing anything right. And so when your brain feels like, oh my gosh, it only focuses on what's missing or what we don't have, or that gap between where I am and where I want to go, cortisol rises, you stay in fight or flight, and you stay in the stress mode. And so you are not going to feel safe to move forward or take risks. But if instead we can focus on the gain and what we've gained, we focus on the 8 donuts that she didn't eat, then our body's like, wow, I really did some good stuff. And so when you think about your goals, you can stretch that and you can believe more, right? And so that's not just this psychology that we talk about, it's physically what's happening in your body. When we are in fight or flight, we can't accomplish as much. So anything we can do to ease our nervous system and slow those things down, and it's just as simple as like, hey, I'm going to reflect on my wins. It's not like you got to go meditate for half an hour every day. It's I'm going to think about the gains that I've made instead of focusing on the gap. So anybody read Atomic Habits? James Clear? So he says in that book, determine the person you want to become and prove it to yourself with, does anybody know the end of that? Small wins, all right? Not big wins, not, oh, I got that huge $1 million deal. No, I made a new connection today, or I called 10 people that I didn't want to call. I forgot to start at this. Anybody want to share the wins that they had? Anybody willing? Participation. Okay.
I had a salad today.
What's your name?
Jeremy.
Jeremy. Was that your win that you wrote down?
No, I grew my company by 17%, but I have a lot. I just thought I'd
Well, that's amazing, though. 17% grew your company, but I do love it. You had a salad today. Is that part of one of your goals? Does it fit within your goals?
Yeah, I'm trying to have, told Dutch today at lunch, trying to have like 3 salads a week.
Well, you're 1/3 of the way there. Nice job. Anybody else? Oh, okay. Apparently, Vinny, you have one you're supposed to share.
I had lettuce on my unlimited tacos today.
Is that what you wrote down?
No,
12 tacos today.
okay, consistent workouts.
Consistent
That
workouts.
was a win that I put.
I love that. I love that. So one more. Anyone on this side of the room? Yeah.
I made a job change after 7 years with the same company, so that was, for me, it was a big win.
Was it hard to step away because of the security of what you knew? Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a win because
Because you did it.
yeah.
You took the brave step to step out and do it. Good job. I love that. I love that. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. So there is a book called The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan, I think. You were shaking your head. Have you read it?
Part of it.
Part of it? Yeah. I mean, most of the books I read about half of it. Some of them I finish. But yes, they just have great information in it so that we can really focus and shift our mindset, right? Part of this in making our body feel safe is that brain rewiring. So I'm actually reading another book right now called Wired for Joy, and I will probably get to the end of this one. And it's all about using your emotional brain and retraining your emotional brain. And it's all about how, hey, if we struggle to do something or if we get stuck in that gap a lot of times, it's just because of the wiring of our brain. It's not because you don't have the motivation. It's not because you can't do it. It's not because you're lazy. It's because you have a default wiring in your brain that just naturally makes you do that. Yeah.
And who's the author on that?
I will find out before the end. I'm going to write that down. One of Jeffrey's pens. Author. It's just not on the top of my head, but it's just called Wired for Joy, and I think there's only one.
Okay.
Author of. Anyways, but what she talks about here is there's ways to break those patterns. First, we have to start just with curiosity to understand, to identify, hey, I naturally get bored when I get home from work in those transitions. She talks about how transition times are really times where we struggle. And when you're talking about health-related things, maybe that's when you go have a snack, or maybe that's when you go have that bowl of ice cream, or maybe whatever, times when we're bored or we're in transition. And so just identifying it and saying, hey, that's just a wiring in my brain. I'm not gonna judge it. I'm not gonna say that, oh my gosh, I have no willpower, I'm not motivated, why can't I hold to these things? Instead, just saying, hey, why is it that I do that? Just get curious about it and ask yourself more questions, and then start to uncover maybe what leads you to do that, and then say, hey, how can I make a swap? How can I do something else that satisfies that need? I took it out of these slides. I was gonna do that whole action, trigger, reward. Have you guys ever seen that before in breaking habits? This also can be going with rewiring your brain, but every habit that we have has this natural progression of you have a trigger. So maybe it's you see an ad on TV that reminds you of something, whatever. You have a trigger, you have an action, and you have a reward. The reward is what you're trying to achieve with the action. So, and the action is typically the thing that we don't like or that we're trying to change, right? That's the habit we don't like. So how do we replace that habit with something else that still gets you the reward? There's nothing wrong with the reward of like, I want to relax. I want to feel comfortable. I want to enjoy my evening. There's nothing wrong with those rewards. Sometimes it's how we get the reward that maybe isn't as beneficial or helpful. And that can be for our physical body or for maybe our focus in our job and things like that. Okay. On this, I was going to say here, let me just read what I had on my slide. I never really go on my slides, but I'll give it to you. So our brains are wired to focus on the gap. It's a natural thing that we do. We have a tendency to look towards negativity because of survival, right? If you're in the wilderness, you always have to be a little bit on edge of looking for the negative thing so that if the negative thing comes, you can run away and not get eaten by a bear, all right? But what's missing is that we don't look at this gain. And motivation is what grows our focus. And by focusing on our gain, it increases our motivation. And this is what also gives us that safety in our brain that I was talking about before. Okay, slide notes, it doesn't matter. Okay, now I want you to talk about your goals. Now thinking in light of your wins, if you guys, did anybody make goals in December or maybe the beginning of January for either yourself or your business? Just to raise your hands. Anybody? Couple people? Okay. If you did, I'd be curious, when reflecting on wins, does it change what your goals are? Does it make you feel like you can make them bigger? Maybe take a different risk? Anyways, everybody take 30 seconds or so just to write down at least one goal. It can be personal, it can be professional. Doesn't matter what it is. Just make it sort of meaningful. Not just like, oh, I want to walk 100 steps a day or something, I don't know. And if anybody's willing to share their goal, you want to share?
Sure.
What's your goal? What's your name?
I've got a few. Lori.
Lori.
I'm
Okay.
Lori and she's Lori.
Okay. Oh yeah, this was the Lori table.
Lori and the Lori table. So I'm trying to figure out when is the right time to retire.
Oh, okay.
And to do that, I need to really drill down on what is outgoing each month. I have an idea, but I don't have it really
Okay.
drilled down. So I've built this whole spreadsheet,
Okay.
starting with January, going to go through the whole year and really look at that and
Okay.
see what that looks like, where I think I can cut, if I think it's appropriate. So that's one of them. Purge the basement and more strength training.
Okay. Which one do you want me to pick on? Can I pick
The
on one of
first
them? Okay. So it sounds like the first one is you want to basically clarify your finances so that you can confidently retire.
Maybe early. is
Maybe
what I'm
early.
looking for.
Okay.
So,
Perfect. So let me challenge you on the why, right? If you achieve that, what changes for you if you achieve understanding of your retirement goals?
I think when I really have the hard numbers, I'm going to change my spending habits.
Okay. So tell me then, and this is going to sound like a 2-year-old, but bear with me. If you changed your spending habits, what changes for you? How would life be different if you change your spending habits?
More money to put towards retirement,
Okay.
and also knowing what the true expense would be in retirement, or close estimate of it, I guess.
Okay. And so having more money in retirement and kind of having that confidence of knowing what you'd have in retirement, how does that change your perspective, or how does that change your current situation? How would that change things for you? Yeah.
Change the time frame of retirement.
Okay. So changing the time frame of retirement, how does that change things for you? Like what will that give you?
More freedom to do just.
I like that
fun
word right
stuff.
there. Freedom and fun. Okay. So that's your why. I like to do that with people and challenge, and maybe you guys have been through exercises of finding your why, but we set goals all the time. But if we can get deeper into why we want that goal, it gives us something to nail down. And this kind of goes into that mindset piece of kind of the 3 pillars I mentioned at the very beginning of if we know why, it's easier to keep going towards a goal if it's like, I'm running towards freedom and fun, right? That sounds awesome. But if I'm running towards a spreadsheet that's going to help me understand whether or not I'm going to retire, that's not as fun. But that's part of the steps in the process to get you there, right? So I recently had this interaction where somebody shared this with me, and I love it now, so I'm using it. But if I ask you when it's hard and you don't want to go through your budgets or you don't want to hold back on your money, and I say, what do you want? And you say, I want to retire early, right? Why do you want it? Or what do you want? I guess technically here is I want a clear spreadsheet, right? Why do you want it? I want fun and freedom, right? So when you're like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to dig through all my bills, then if you dig down to that, it might make you more motivated to keep going with that. So that's the importance of the why. Then the third question that I always ask people on that, and this goes into kind of the wins and setting your goals and accomplishing your goals, is how are you going to get there, right? First ask yourself, what do you want? Then why do you want it? If you can clearly go down and ask yourself that same question like 5 times to get to what you really want. Oftentimes it's freedom, it's joy, it's safety, it's things like that that are usually our deeper whys. Then ask yourself, how am I going to get there? How do you think you're going to get there? Anybody? What did James Clear say?
Some small wins.
Small wins. So similarly, one step at a time, right? It's not one giant leap. It's one tiny step at a time. All right. Now, we can't talk about goals without talking about what gets in our way. So I want you guys to think about whatever your goal was, what would you project or foresee might get in your way? This is hard to see. That is not a good color for the screen. Sorry about that, guys. Anybody willing to share some of their foreseen barriers? You want to share?
So my goal is to pay off a particular loan that I don't
Okay.
like having.
Okay.
And my barriers are lack of revenue and lack of discipline.
Okay.
Lack of discipline is the one that is more troubling to me than lack of revenue.
So tell me this. Do you truly lack discipline?
No,
Right. You get up and you probably brush your teeth every day, right?
I make my bed.
And you make your bed, okay? And you probably go to work unless you're throwing up. So you do have discipline, right? So it's usually something else that gets in the way. It's not truly that you don't have discipline. So one of the things that I like to uncover, a lot of times people say they're lazy or they're unmotivated or they lack discipline, but really there's probably something else. Maybe you want something else that makes you more comfortable, right? You want to spend that money because it helps you relax or it's fun, right? It's more about prioritizing. Sometimes I talk about in the terms of laziness, I wonder for people if we dig down, is it more about energy? Is it more about focus, right? Do you get distracted? Or is it about feeling overwhelmed and stressed, right? And this is where I want to tie us into our biology. That's the third pillar I told you about. I said rewiring your brain, your mindset, and then our biology. Of course, this is the part I'm super passionate about. All of them go together though, right? I can't ignore your mindset or your brain wiring and just talk about food you put in your mouth or something. It all ties together. So I'll tell you about Elizabeth, who she educates people on really great sales processes, and she's starting her own business, so she's trying to grow and expand. And she called me to help work with her because her energy was just awful. She's like, I can push through the day and I can get through it, but the second I get home, I am like on the couch and I'm worthless. So her work-life balance was really awful. She was in this home that they had lots of acreage and they loved it. They loved being out in the country, but it had a pond and had all these things that they needed to upkeep. And she's like, I can't keep up with it. So they literally were thinking about selling their home to downsize so they didn't have as much responsibility because she was like, I don't have the energy to do this. She actually luckily had a Garmin watch. That's what this data on the side here is. She had a Garmin watch that showed her body battery. And when we first met, before we started working together, she said, I'll wake up in the morning after a full night's sleep and my body battery is 45%. It should be much higher than that if you got a good night's sleep, right? She's like, I just don't get it. So she was exhausted. And it was impacting her work as she's trying to grow this business. So we worked together. This is about 2 months into us working together, so you can see the beginning of that slide. Her body battery is a little bit better. She's somewhere between I think 50 and 75%, maybe 80%. We made strides, but she had pushed off this one thing I was trying to get her to do until just after Easter. And you can see where Easter was, where everything goes back down. She gave up for just a bit. And then she started what's called an elimination diet. I don't recommend that for all my people, but it can show things that are causing low-grade inflammation in your body and maybe causing problems with your sleep. Well, as you can see, the day she started her elimination diet, she started sleeping like crazy. Her sleep scores are like 80 to 90, and her body battery was anywhere from 100% to like 75 on the low end. She was like, oh my gosh, I feel like a whole new person. She started cleaning up around her pond and rebuilding her fence and doing all that stuff, and now they decided instead to add on to their house instead of move. So they stayed where they were. She got more energy. She had great sleep, and her mood improved, her productivity improved. And this is what can happen when you find out what's happening and the root cause of what's going on in your biology. So if you can't get through things and you're not motivated to complete your tasks or to achieve your goals, it might be because you're exhausted. It might be because every night you get home, you're on the couch at 7 o'clock and you can't do anything else. And you can't recharge your own personal battery because all you do is give everything to your work. So I want to give some scenarios, and you can write down on your paper which one resonates with you. I may ask you to have a show of hands, but similar to what Elizabeth said, I'm going to read these to you and maybe just see which one resonates with you. So the first scenario is this. Have you ever been in the flow in the morning, you're getting tons of work done, and it's like 10 o'clock, and then you're like, oh my God, I'm starving. Like my breakfast didn't last, it didn't get me through the morning, and so then I have to stop what I'm doing, it derails me, I gotta go find a snack or go find a second breakfast, and it takes me about 20 or 30 minutes, and then I get back to my work, right? It's an interruption. It's not that you weren't motivated, it's that it's an interruption because you're hungry. Number 2, it's 2 p.m. and you just hit a wall. Your brain stops working, you were staring at the clock and you're like, oh my God, will this day ever end, right? And you're just like, it's not moving. And what do? Do you push through it? Do you pick up your phone and start scrolling to try to make yourself feel better? Or do you go find coffee? I was the coffee girl. 12-hour shifts, almost every day around 2 o'clock. Maybe even as late as 4 o'clock, since I had to be there till 7, I would be getting coffee. I learned about that. And then number 3, and just be honest. Who goes and gets a cookie or maybe a bag of chips when you just don't want to do that project? Just procrastination. All right, do any of these resonate with anyone? Yes. Okay. So you're not alone. These are normal signs, and these are other things that I think people probably feel. So I want you guys to write down in your paper any 1, 2, 3, or all of these that you feel on a fairly regular basis. Now, if you have it once a month, no big deal, right? We all have these little things. But oftentimes I have somebody in the room that's like, can I write all of the above? Which of these resonate with you? If any. You might not have any, and that's totally fine. That's actually amazing. Has anybody ever felt like these are just normal signs of aging? Right. I want to tell you they shouldn't be. I don't know. I had a friend one time that went to the doctor. She was in perimenopause age range, which is many of us, right? She was, I think, 50. And her doctor literally told her, well, you probably should just expect to gain 3 to 5 pounds for the next 10 years. And she was like, so you're telling me in the next 10 years I'm going to gain 30 to 50 pounds? And I was like, don't accept that. But this is part of the problem. And this is where I want to talk to you guys about normal. Because oftentimes, even our medical society just says, sorry, it's just normal, get used to it. Kind of like I said with the emergency room, hey, everything's normal. It's not normal. It maybe is normal for our society who is sick, so that is normal. If you look at labs now and how they get within normal limits, it's an average of the society you live in. So as we get sicker, the lab values actually change. But our bodies haven't changed, and what our bodies need have not changed. So what is optimal is what I like to challenge people to. And so I think that's the third thing for high performance. And if you really want to achieve your goals, it's not about willpower and stuff. It's about expecting optimal. And if you're not living and operating at optimal, why not? Let's find out what is holding you back so that we can balance your biology so that it will work with you. So this is one of the slides I use all the time. So if anybody's ever been in one of my talks, you've seen this thing. So I talk about insulin resistance. Now, not everybody in the room has insulin resistance, but 94% of Americans have some form of metabolic dysfunction. So you might have this. It's pretty common. So this is basically just the understanding. Insulin resistance is I eat food. If it has any type of carbohydrates or sugars in it, my body has to release insulin to go store it away so I can use the energy when I need the energy. Sometimes you use it because you're working out right away. Sometimes you store it for later. Now, when we get on these big, huge spikes of sugar and then crashes, that's when we have fatigue. That's when we get hangry at 10 a.m. right? That's when we hit those 2 p.m. crashes. So all those scenarios I gave you are examples of what people feel when they have some level of insulin resistance. And I do a lot of stuff, like Jeffrey mentioned, with continuous glucose monitors. So we're not guessing anymore. I'm actually looking at data and watching what happens at different times of the day with people, with their food choices, with their stress, with their exercise, to find out what's actually happening biochemically in their body, to identify these crashes. So you can say, oh, that's why I'm exhausted right there. That's why every day at this time I'm tired. Or that's why every day at this time I'm looking for food. All right? So I want to show you something about normal. I'm going to press on this normal optimal thing here. So Jason is one of my clients, and apparently Jeff knows him. So he did a continuous glucose monitor challenge with me. Well, he did 12-week coaching with me, but at the beginning I always use a glucose monitor on those people too. And if he got this glucose monitor himself and used what they had preset as their normal ranges, and what I was taught as a nurse too, is that normal blood sugar is from 70 to 140. That's what I was taught as normal. So if he got it, this is what he would have seen. And he would have been 91% in range. If you got those results, what would you think?
Good to go.
Yeah, right? You think you're pretty good to go. Well, he was exhausted. He had sleep apnea, couldn't sleep, was snoring like crazy, keeping his wife up. He was stressed out. Now, this is what normal looks like. I put my clients in optimal ranges. So based on research that I've done, I believe your blood sugar should instead be between 70 and 120, sometimes even lower depending where you start. I consider a blood sugar spike a change from baseline of more than 30 points. So you could still be between 70 and 120 and go up more than 30 points. But I look at the trends. This is where he was. So instead of being an A-, he was an F, right? When he looked at my optimal ranges, he was 43% of the time in range. This helps to understand why he felt like crap, right? So we worked together through similar things that I did with Elizabeth, really not changing anything. He now calls it his intentional diet. If everybody asks him, like, what are you doing? Are you doing GLP-1s? Are you doing keto? What are you doing? He's like, I'm just eating for what my body needs, right? It's nothing, it's no prescribed anything. This is what changed. In 2 months, he changed his within range, in the optimal range, from 43% to 96%. Previously, he was pre-diabetic, no longer pre-diabetic. He was on 2 blood pressure medications. He's not on blood pressure medications. He was on cholesterol medication. He's not on cholesterol medication. And he doesn't snore at night and keep his wife up anymore. He also lost 50 pounds, which probably helped that too. But he also says, I feel freaking amazing. Now, Jason's story also goes back to 2023 in December. So as Jeffrey knows, the end of the year, well, you said you don't really do this, but for his world, the end of the year can be some of the busiest times because he's also in the insurance broker world. They're trying to put together their benefits packages for January 1, so they have a lot of stuff going on. December of 2023, he ended up in the emergency room thinking he was having a heart attack. He has a history of men dying early in his family in the 60s. So he was scared to death as a mid-40-year-old man going to the emergency room with chest pain this time of year. Come to find out he was okay. They did put him on more blood pressure medication, but whatever. So that was 2 years ago, right? We were reflecting on that time recently of this year and how was it different, right? He said he just had one of the most successful years he's ever had in his business. And I said, well, and he was busier than ever. And I said, well, how did you make it through this year compared to 2 years ago when you were so stressed out you ended up in the emergency room? He was like, I feel freaking amazing, so I can continue to do this. So that's what changes your potential and your possibility, is if you can feel like your body can keep up with what your brain wants to do and everything else you want to do. All right, so how do we get there, right? We rewire our brain. I have another recap slide, so I'm doing it twice. We fix our mindset and we get our biology straight. But research has shown, do you guys ever know the research about support and how we actually achieve our goals? So if you think about a goal, anybody today just thought about a goal, didn't even write it down? You are about 35% likely to accomplish that goal. Now, if you wrote it down, you're a little better. You have about a 42% chance of achieving your goals and getting there. But if you take it another step further and you commit to it, you write down actions that you would tie to that, and then the key here is you tell somebody about it, you get yourself up to 70 to 75% more likely to do it. And if you have regular check-ins, you could get yourself as high as 95% more likely to achieve your goals. That's why support matters, right? It's not just about somebody like myself saying coaches are good, right? It's about, you could probably speak to this too, right? Coaching helps you because you have to show up for yourself every single week. It's not even that we necessarily do anything. It's that you have to show up and talk about it every single week, and you have to be accountable to yourself because you're gonna have to speak to those things. So support is key. So whatever your goals are, if they're important enough to you, find, whether it be an accountability partner, whether it be some sort of coach like myself or others that are in the room, and achieve your goals so that you can feel your best and find that support. So here is that lovely recap I already kind of went through. Just ask yourself these questions, right? If your brain, and you're trying to figure out the wiring in your brain, does your body feel safe? Are you telling yourself, you suck? Why couldn't you accomplish that? If you're going down that shame and guilt spiral, you're probably not going to be achieving your goals. But if instead you can have compassion for yourself and you can say, hey, you did this really well, even if it was small, and you grow on that, you feel safer. With your mindset, do you believe it's possible? Right? Do you have belief? Those wins help you create belief that it's possible. And then finally, your biology. Are you striving for normal? Are you just accepting normal as your answer? Or are you striving to be optimal and really pushing yourself to say, hey, I'm not gonna accept feeling like crap anymore, right? If I'm fatigued, if I can't get through the day, what do I need to find out about myself so I can feel like I'm striving to be optimal? Because if you're optimal in your body, you're more likely to be optimal in life, whether that be your business or personally or whatever your goals are. All right? If you're not sure if you're optimal, I do have the continuous glucose monitor that Jeffrey so nicely served up on a platter. So if you're ever curious about that, I do take people through that. 2 weeks, you get a monitor, you don't change anything for a week, you get a monitor, and then we look at your data, we make some changes, and tiny little shifts. I had somebody do this one time that was drinking a smoothie every morning, which sounds like a great breakfast, but her blood sugar was 170 after her smoothie, which, as you saw from my normal side, isn't normal, right? And so we made little shifts to it. I changed like a couple of the things she put in there, a different kind of protein powder, different kind of milk, and the next time it was like 119. She wasn't hungry later. She had sustained energy. And so little shifts like that can help. Anyways, questions. If you ever just want to ask and share your goals with somebody too, like we talked about there, not charging people for this. You can just, this scanner just goes to like book a little call or do that CGM challenge or anything else if you want to just talk to me about anything. Yes?
So as you do the glucose monitor, you're also writing down what you're eating so you know why the glucose monitor is doing what it's doing.
There's an app that you just add events. I tell people to add their sleep, their stress, what they're eating. 12 tacos on Taco Tuesday.
With lettuce.
Yeah.
This lettuce delivery
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
Might break them all.
Any other questions while you guys have me? Comments, anything? Yeah.
Lauren Mellon wrote the book.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, Wired for Joy. Did you hear that, the book? Last name Mellon. Isn't it M-E-L-L-A-N? I-N. M-E-L-L-I-N. Yeah.
I really like the gap in the gain stuff for the beginning of the year because, I mean, so many people start something new and they fail once and they just focus on that.
Right.
When you can start over the next day. So, I mean, focusing on the build-up and continuing is we keep a lot of these resolutions going, I think.
Yeah. Well, even if your gain is, hey, guess what? My one failure didn't stop me,
Yeah.
right? I got up and I tried again. So, yeah.
Very cool. Well, thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Well, thank you, guys.